The
You have
city
to
was
go faster.
alive
They
with
are
the sound
gaining
of
on us.
honking horns and bustling footsteps, the usual rush of people trying to make their way through another busy afternoon. But in one sleek black car parked on the side of the road, everything was different. Inside the car, a billionaire lay slumped over the steering wheel, his face pale and lifeless. The sound of his breathing was shallow, a weak gasp every few seconds. A little girl, no older than 7, stood frozen in the street, watching the man in the car, her wide brown eyes filled with uncertainty and fear. She had been walking home from school, her backpack bouncing slightly with each step, when she saw the car parked there. At first, she thought it was nothing, but as she neared the vehicle, something caught her eye. The door was cracked open, and she could see the man slumped over. The sight sent a jolt of panic through her. She had no idea who he was, but the distress on his face was unmistakable. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. "Sir, are you okay?" she called out softly, her voice barely audible over the noise of the city. There was no response. The man didn't move. The little girl took a tentative step forward, her eyes darting around. No one was nearby. The street was unusually quiet, and it seemed like everyone had disappeared. She took another step, then another, until she was standing right next to the car. Her tiny hands gripped the door handle, and she pushed it open. The man didn't stir. His face was now completely flushed, and his breathing was ragged. Without thinking, she reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, her small fingers fumbling as she dialed the emergency number. "Help, help, someone's hurt. I don't know what happened, but he's not moving. Please, you have to send someone quickly." The phone call ended, and the little girl stood there, staring at the man. She didn't know what to do. Her mind raced, trying to figure out the best way to help him. There was no one around, and she was just a child. But one thing was clear. He needed help, and he needed it now. Her heart raced as she glanced nervously down the street. She couldn't leave him. He was in danger. She thought for a moment, her mind racing. And then, without hesitation, she opened the driver's side door, climbed in, and pushed the seat back, trying to make room. The man was heavy, but somehow, she managed to maneuver him. His head was now resting on her shoulder, and her small hands gripped the steering wheel. She looked down at the dashboard, her eyes scanning for anything that could help her. The keys were in the ignition. She could feel her stomach twist with fear, but she knew what she had to do. With determination, she twisted the keys, and the car's engine roared to life. The little girl took a deep breath and slowly, cautiously, pressed the gas pedal. The car jerked forward, the wheels spinning slightly on the wet pavement. She turned the steering wheel with all her might, her small body straining against the pressure. The car moved, slowly at first, but then faster as she gained more control. The street felt endless, like it stretched out before her for miles. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she tried to keep her focus. She had to get him to the hospital. He was depending on her. She didn't know how she was going to do it, but she knew she couldn't stop. Her mind raced with the possibility of what could go wrong, but she pushed those thoughts aside. She had to stay calm. The car sped through the city, past towering buildings and honking cars. She barely noticed the world around her, her focus only on the road ahead. Her hands were shaking, but she gripped the steering wheel tighter. She wasn't going to let him down. The little girl's heart was racing, each beat echoing in her ears as she struggled to control the steering wheel. The billionaire's body felt heavy beside her, and she kept glancing over, watching his labored breathing as his head swayed with the motion of the car. She had no idea how she was going to get him to the hospital in time. She could barely reach the pedals, her small feet barely touching the gas and brake. The car lurched forward, and her grip tightened. "Please, please don't pass out," she whispered under her breath, her voice trembling. She didn't know who he was or how he ended up in the car, but one thing was clear: she had to get him to safety. There was no time to wait for an ambulance. The city was bustling around her, the streets filled with cars honking and pedestrians walking in every direction. But she couldn't focus on any of that. All she could think about was the man beside her and the fact that she was the only one who could help him. She glanced at the rearview mirror, but there was no sign of anyone following. The road ahead seemed long and endless, but she kept driving, her small hands gripping the wheel with all the strength she could muster. Her eyes darted to the man next to her, his face still pale, and she could hear his shallow breathing. His chest rose and fell with each weak breath, and she could see his fingers twitching, but he wasn't responding. She knew that every second counted. She wasn't sure how long it had been, but the streets felt unfamiliar now. She didn't recognize the buildings, and the traffic seemed to be getting heavier, but she couldn't stop. The hospital was close. She knew it was somewhere ahead. She pressed her foot harder on the gas pedal, willing the car to go faster. The wheels screeched as she turned the corner, the car bumping over the uneven pavement. She could feel the weight of the man beside her pressing against her, his body shifting every time she made a turn. Sweat was beading on her forehead, and her heart was pounding, but she couldn't stop. She had to keep going. She thought back to her mom's warnings about crossing streets, about staying away from strange cars, about being careful. But this wasn't about her. This was about him. She had to do something. She couldn't just leave him there to die. As she approached a red light, she slammed on the brakes, the car jerking to a halt. The billionaire's head lurched forward, and she caught him just in time, holding his body steady. "Come on, stay with me," she whispered, her voice shaking. The light turned green, and she pressed the pedal again, the car slowly moving forward. She could feel the car sluggish, like it was fighting against her. It wasn't going fast enough, and every second felt like a lifetime. She looked at the hospital sign up ahead, the letters glowing bright, but it seemed so far away. Her hands were slick with sweat, and her feet felt numb, but she kept driving, one hand on the wheel, the other bracing the billionaire's limp body. The world outside seemed to blur as she sped toward the hospital, and the noise of the city faded into the background. Her focus was solely on the man beside her, her eyes flicking between him and the road ahead. The pain in her chest grew stronger with each passing moment, and she couldn't tell if it was from fear or exhaustion. "Please," she whispered again, her voice barely audible. "Please make it." The hospital was so close now. She could see the entrance, the lights of the emergency room flashing in the distance. She could hear the sirens in the background, but they didn't seem to be getting closer. They weren't for her. She had to do this herself. As she pulled up to the emergency entrance, the doors swung open automatically. She slammed the car into park and jumped out, her legs shaking as she rushed around to the passenger side. She opened the door and gently pulled the billionaire out of the car, her small hands struggling to support his weight. She screamed for help as she ran toward the doors, her voice breaking. All she could think about was the man beside her and the fact that she was the only one who could help him. She glanced at the rearview mirror, but there was no sign of anyone following. The road ahead seemed long and endless, but she kept driving, her small hands gripping the wheel with all the strength she could muster. Her eyes darted to the man next to her, his face still pale, and she could hear his shallow breathing. She had to do something. She couldn't just leave him there to die. As she approached a red light, she slammed on the brakes, the car jerking to a halt. The billionaire's head lurched forward, and she caught him just in time, holding his body steady. "Come on, stay with me," she whispered, her voice shaking. The light turned green, and she pressed the pedal again, the car slowly moving forward. She could feel the car sluggish, like it was fighting against her. That thought should have made me feel relieved, but instead, all I felt was numb. The weight of what had just happened began to sink in. I had never done anything like that before. I had never been in a situation like this, but something inside me had pushed me to act. The adrenaline was fading now, and the reality of what had just occurred was starting to settle in. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, staring at the automatic sliding doors, waiting for someone to tell me what was going to happen next. Then, a voice behind me startled me. "Hey, are you the one who brought him in?" I turned around quickly, my eyes wide. A woman in scrubs was standing there, her face softening as she saw my confused expression. "You're the one who saved him, aren't you?" she asked again, this time with more certainty. I nodded, unable to find the words. I didn't know what to say. "You're very brave," she said, kneeling down to my level. "You did something that a lot of adults wouldn't have been able to do. He's going to be okay because of you." The woman's words felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I didn't know if she realized how much I needed to hear that. I hadn't done it for recognition. I had just done what felt right. But hearing her say, those words made everything feel real. She smiled at me before standing up. "We're going to take care of him. Why don't you come inside and sit down for a bit?" You must be exhausted." I hesitated for a moment, looking back at the sliding doors of the hospital. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to know what was going to happen to the man, but I also knew I needed a moment to breathe, to process, to just sit. "Okay," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. The woman led me inside to a waiting room, where I sat down on one of the plastic chairs. It was quiet, almost too quiet, and the only sounds were the occasional beeping of machines and the rustle of papers in the hallway. I sat there for what felt like hours, my thoughts running wild. Who was he? Why was he alone? And why had I been the one to find him? I didn't know the answers. I didn't even know if I wanted to know. I just knew that something inside me had pushed me to act, and in the end, it was enough. A few minutes later, the woman from earlier returned. She had a serious look on her face. "He's awake," she said, "and he's asking for you." My heart skipped a beat. He was awake? He was okay? I stood up quickly, almost stumbling as I rushed toward her. She smiled and gestured for me to follow her. We walked down the hallway together, the fluorescent lights overhead flickering softly. As we reached the door to the room where the man was being treated, the woman stopped and turned to me. "He's very grateful, you know. He said that he wouldn't be here without you." I felt a lump form in my throat, and I swallowed hard. I didn't know what to say. I hadn't done it for praise. I hadn't even thought about what he might say. But hearing her words, hearing how he was feeling, made everything I had done feel so much more meaningful. I stepped into the room, and there he was, lying in the bed, his face still pale but with a faint smile on his lips. He looked up as I walked in, and his eyes softened. "You saved me," he said, his voice hoarse but full of gratitude. I nodded, unsure of what to say in return. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to say anything at all. "Thank you," he added, his voice growing stronger. "I don't know how to thank you enough. You're a hero." I didn't feel like a hero. I was just a little girl who did what had to be done. But as I looked into his eyes, I realized something. Maybe, just maybe, I was more than I had ever believed myself to be. The room was quiet now. The beeping of the heart monitor the only sound breaking the stillness. The billionaire, whose life I had saved only hours ago, was now awake and sitting up in the hospital bed. His face was still pale, but his eyes were wide, filled with gratitude and disbelief. He stared at me, still trying to process what had happened. "You saved me," he said again, his voice rasping slightly. "How? How did you do it?" His question wasn't meant to make me feel small, but it was a question that I knew didn't have an easy answer. I looked down at my feet, unsure of what to say. I wasn't special. I wasn't trained in emergency care or even old enough to understand all the details of the world around me. But in that moment, something inside me had clicked, and I had acted. I didn't think about it. I just did what needed to be done. "I don't know," I said softly, my voice barely a whisper. "I just saw you, and you needed help. I couldn't just leave you there." The billionaire studied me for a long moment, his eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to understand how someone so small, so young, could have the courage to do what I did. "You're incredible," he finally said, shaking his head in disbelief. "You know that, right?" I didn't answer. I wasn't sure how to respond to a compliment like that. I had never thought of myself as incredible. I had just done what anyone would do in that situation, what anyone should do. But hearing him say it made me feel like maybe I was more than I had ever thought. Maybe I had more power inside me than I knew. The billionaire's voice softened as he continued. "You don't even know who I am, do you?" I shook my head. I didn't know who he was. To me, he was just a man who had needed help, and I had given it. "I'm Richard Bennett," he said, offering his hand to me, "and I owe you my life." His hand was warm and strong as I shook it, and I could see the sincerity in his eyes. "Thank you for saving me." I nodded, but still, I felt like I wasn't the one who deserved the thanks. It wasn't me who needed saving. It was him. "It was nothing," I mumbled, my cheeks flushing slightly. "I just wanted to help." The room fell into a long, awkward silence as both of us seemed to be processing what had just happened. I couldn't believe it myself. "I don't know what you're going through, Anna," he said quietly, his voice softening, "but I want to help. I don't know how. but I want to help you." The words hung in the air for a moment. What did he mean? What did he want to do? I had no idea, but there was something in his voice, something genuine that made me believe that whatever he was offering, it wasn't just words, it was real. "I just wanted to help," I said again, feeling the weight of his words settle on my shoulders. "Anna," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Anna." Richard nodded, a soft smile playing on his lips. "Anna," he repeated, testing the name on his tongue as if it was something precious. "You're a hero, Anna." I didn't know what to say. "I'm just a kid," I muttered, looking down at the floor again, my hands fidgeting with the hem of my sleeve. Richard's smile faded a little, and he leaned forward slightly, his expression serious now. "No," he said firmly, "you're not just a kid. You're someone who made a choice. You chose to help, and because of that, I'm still here." His words hit me harder than I expected. I had never thought about it like that. I had just done what felt right. I hadn't stopped to think about the consequences or how big of a deal it was. To me, it was just something that had to be done. But Richard's words made me realize that sometimes, doing the right thing no matter how small could make a bigger difference than you could ever imagine. He leaned back in his bed, his eyes still on me, as if waiting for me to say something, but I didn't know what to say. The silence stretched between us again, but this time, it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that felt comfortable, like two people who didn't need words to understand each other. Finally, Richard broke it again. "I don't know what you're going through, Anna," he said quietly, his voice softening, "but I want to help. I don't know how, but I want to help you." The words hung in the air for a moment. What did he mean? What did he want to do? I had no idea, but there was something in his voice, something genuine that made me believe that whatever he was offering, it wasn't just words, it was real. "I just wanted to help," I said again, feeling the weight of his words settle on my shoulders. I didn't need anything in return. Richard looked at me for a moment longer, his expression unreadable, before he smiled again, this time more softly. "You're an amazing person, Anna," he said, his voice filled with admiration, "and I'll never forget what you did for me." The following days felt like a blur. I didn't know what had happened to the billionaire after that moment in the hospital. Richard Bennett, the man I had saved, was now part of my thoughts, but I still didn't know how to feel about everything. I kept replaying the moment over and over in my head, the chaos of the car ride, the hospital, his gratitude. It was as if the world had shifted, but everything in my life had stayed the same. The same small apartment with my mother, the same old neighborhood, the same problems. Nothing had changed for me, except now I was carrying around a feeling I couldn't shake off. "You're not just a kid. You're someone who made a choice. You chose to help, and because of that, I'm still here." His words hit me harder than I expected. I had never thought about it like that. I had just done what felt right. I hadn't stopped to think about the consequences or how big of a deal it was. To me, it was just something that had to be done. But just as those thoughts started to settle in my mind, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something inside me told me to pick it up. "Hello?" I said, my voice uncertain. "Anna?" The voice on the other end was familiar. It was Richard. "Yes?" I replied, feeling my heart race in my chest. "I don't know if you remember me," he said, his voice a little shaky, "but I wanted to reach out. I've been thinking about you, a lot." My heart skipped a beat. Why would he be thinking about me? I remember you," I said softly, unsure of where this was going. "I just wanted to say thank you again, for what you did. I can never repay you, but I want to try. I want to help you, Anna. I want to make sure that you don't feel like you're alone. You saved my life. The least I can do is try to help you in any way I can." His words were so unexpected, and they sent a wave of emotions rushing through me. I had never expected anything like this. How had I ended up in this situation? How had I, just a little girl, managed to save this man's life? The questions kept swirling in my head, but I couldn't find the answers. Richard broke the silence with a question that caught me off guard. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice gentle. I looked up at him, startled by the sudden question. It felt strange to be asked my name after everything that had just happened. I had never thought about it. There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear him take a deep breath. "I was thinking," he continued, "that maybe I could help you with your education. Maybe I can help get you into a good school. Maybe I can help with anything you need. You deserve more than what you have." I felt the ground shift beneath me. A good school? Help? It was too much. Too much to process. I don't know what to say," I whispered. "You don't have to do this." "I want to," Richard said firmly. "You've already given me more than I could ever repay. You saved me, Anna. Let me give you the chance to save yourself. You have so much potential. I want to help you get where you deserve to be." I didn't know how to respond. There were so many thoughts swirling in my mind. I had never been offered something like this before. I didn't even know what kind of person I was supposed to be to deserve it. All I had done was help him when he was in trouble. That was all. There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear him take a deep breath. "I was thinking," he continued, "that maybe I could help you with your education. Maybe I can help get you into a good school. Maybe I can help with anything you need. You deserve more than what you have." I felt the ground shift beneath me. A good school? Help? It was too much. Too much to process. I don't know what to say," I whispered. "You don't have to do this." "I want to," Richard said firmly. "Okay," I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. I'll accept your help." I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what would come of it. But I knew one thing. I had made a decision. I was no longer just a little girl who had saved a stranger. I was someone who had a chance to make something of myself. And maybe, just maybe, I could start to believe in the potential that Richard saw in me. "You've already given me more than I could ever repay. You saved me, Anna. Let me give you the chance to save yourself. You have so much potential. I want to help you get where you deserve to be." I didn't know how to respond. There were so many thoughts swirling in my mind. I had never been offered something like this before. I didn't even know what kind of person I was supposed to be to deserve it. All I had done was help him when he was in trouble. That was all. "You've already given me more than I could ever repay. You saved me, Anna. Let me give you the chance to save yourself. You have so much potential. I want to help you get where you deserve to be." I didn't know how to respond. There were so many thoughts swirling in my mind. I had never been offered something like this before. I didn't even know what kind of person I was supposed to be to deserve it. All I had done was help him when he was in trouble. That was all, and that was the part I couldn't shake off. The idea that someone saw potential in me when I barely saw it in myself. The phone call from Richard had left me feeling unsure, but also hopeful. I decided to meet with him, to see if what he was offering was real. I wanted to know if this was just some dream, some fantasy, or if this was my chance to change everything. I told my mom about the offer, and at first, she didn't know what to make of it. She was skeptical, just like I was. Who wouldn't be? A billionaire offering to help a little girl like me? It sounded too good to be true. But then, she saw something in me. A spark of hope, maybe. Or maybe she just didn't want me to give up on a chance like this. "If you think it's real, Anna," she said softly, "you should go. You deserve to see what this could be." I nodded, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. That night, Richard sent a car to pick me up, but somehow, this man saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. "I don't know if I can accept," I said, my voice shaky now. It's too much. I don't know if I'm the kind of person who deserves all of this." "You do," Richard said, his voice full of certainty. "You deserve more than you realize, and this is my way of showing you that." I sat in silence for a moment, my mind racing. I could hear Richard still on the other end, waiting for me to say something, anything. A sleek black car, the kind that looked like it belonged to someone important, the kind of car I had only seen in movies. When I stepped inside, the air felt different, like everything in the world had just shifted, and this was my moment to take control. The car ride felt long, even though it wasn't. The city passed by outside the window, the streets blurring as I thought about what I was about to walk into. I had no idea what to expect, but now, I had someone who believed in me, and it was terrifying. I didn't know how to accept help like that. It wasn't just about money or education. It was about believing that I was worth it. It was about trusting someone enough to let them in, to let them help me. That was the hardest part. I had always been the one to take care of myself. I didn't want to rely on anyone else. But here was Richard, a man I didn't know very well, offering me something I had always dreamed of, a chance. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be overwhelming, but I want you to know that I'm here to help." I nodded, not sure of what to say. My mouth felt dry, and my hands were shaking, but I wasn't going to let it show. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," I finally said, my voice soft. "I don't know if I deserve it." Richard took a step closer, his gaze steady but gentle. "You deserve everything, Anna," he said, his voice firm. "You showed me something that I will never forget." There were people walking around, busy with their work, but they all seemed to stop and take notice of me as I walked in. I felt their eyes on me, but I kept my head high. I wasn't going to let my nerves control me. Not this time. Richard's assistant led me to his office, and when the door opened, Richard was there, standing in front of his desk. He smiled warmly at me, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just some little girl in his way. "Anna," he said, his voice kind. I took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling in. "Okay," I said, my voice stronger than I thought it would be. "I'll take the chance. I'll let you help me." Richard smiled again, a proud look on his face. "You won't regret it, Anna," he said, his eyes filled with warmth. "This is just the beginning." It had been a few days since I had agreed to let Richard help me, but it still didn't feel real. Every time I thought about it, my mind raced. I was just a little girl, and he was a billionaire, someone who had everything I didn't. I had never been around people like him, people who had the kind of power and resources that could change your life in an instant. But Richard hadn't seen me that way. He hadn't seen me as someone small or powerless. He had seen something in me, and that made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. I had always told myself that I wasn't worth much, that I couldn't expect help from anyone. But now, here I was, with someone who had promised to help me. I didn't know how to accept that. I had been doing everything on my own for so long. But Richard didn't give up. He was patient. He never pushed me too hard. But he was always there, always checking in, always offering support. One day, he asked me to meet him at a new office. He had opened a space dedicated to helping kids like me get ahead, a place where I could learn, grow, and prepare for the future. I was nervous walking in. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be overwhelming, but I want you to know that I'm here to help." I nodded, not sure of what to say. My mouth felt dry, and my hands were shaking, but I wasn't going to let it show. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," I finally said, my voice soft. "I don't know if I deserve it." Richard took a step closer, his gaze steady but gentle. "You deserve everything, Anna," he said, his voice firm. "You showed me something that I will never forget." Why would he be thinking about me? I remember you," I said softly, unsure of where this was going. "I just wanted to say thank you again, for what you did. I can never repay you, but I want to try. I want to help you, Anna. I want to make sure that you don't feel like you're alone. You saved my life. The least I can do is try to help you in any way I can." His words were so unexpected, and they sent a wave of emotions rushing through me. I had never expected anything like this. What if I wasn't capable of doing all of this? What if I failed? "You don't have to decide everything right now," Richard said, sensing my hesitation. "Take your time, but I want you to know that no matter what, I'm here to support you." His words were comforting, but they also made everything feel even bigger. I had always been afraid of failure, but this was different. I was afraid of success, afraid that if I actually succeeded, it would make me someone I wasn't ready to be. But there was something about Richard's confidence in me, something about the way he looked at me, that made me want to try. Maybe I wasn't ready, but maybe I could be. We talked for hours, going over everything. Richard explained how he wanted to make sure I had every opportunity to succeed. He didn't just want to help me with my education. He wanted me to have a real chance at changing my life. He believed that with the right resources, the right guidance, I could achieve anything. As we talked, I realized something: I didn't have to do this alone. Richard had been right. I didn't have to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to be willing to try. That was the most important part. When I left his office that day, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from everything being perfect, it was the kind of peace that came from knowing that I wasn't alone anymore. I had a support system. I took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling in. "Okay," I said, my voice stronger than I thought it would be. "I'll take the chance. I'll let you help me." Richard smiled again, a proud look on his face. "You won't regret it, Anna," he said, his eyes filled with warmth. "This is just the beginning." It had been a few days since I had agreed to let Richard help me, but it still didn't feel real. Every time I thought about it, my mind raced, and that was a feeling I had never experienced before. Richard's words kept echoing in my mind. "No matter what, I'm here to support you." I realized that, for the first time, someone was actually investing in me, not because of what I could do for them, but because they believed in what I could do for myself, and that changed everything. I wasn't just a girl who had saved a man's life anymore. I was someone who had a future, someone who had the opportunity to make something of herself, and that was something I had never imagined possible. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. I was no longer the little girl who had been scared and unsure. I was someone who was finally taking charge of her future. Richard's support had opened doors for me that I never knew existed. But as things started to fall into place, doubts began to creep in. I had been given so much. But what if I wasn't enough? What if I couldn't live up to the expectations that Richard had for me? I was trying my best, but it still felt like I was walking a tightrope, afraid to fall. One afternoon, as I sat in one of the study rooms at Richard's office, reviewing notes from a tutor session, I felt the weight of the world press down on me. I was studying algebra, something I had never done before, and the equations seemed like a foreign language. I had never been a great student, and now I had to catch up on everything. The pressure was starting to build, and I could feel the familiar panic setting in. I heard a knock at the door, and Richard's assistant entered. "Mr. Bennett wants to see you," she said, her tone calm but warm. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't seen Richard in person in a few days, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for another meeting. But I followed the assistant, my mind racing with questions. Was this the moment he would tell me that I wasn't cut out for this? That maybe I had reached too high, too fast? As I walked into his office, Richard looked up from behind his desk and smiled. "Anna," he said, his voice full of warmth. "How are you?" "I'm okay," I said, my voice shaky, just trying to catch up with everything. Richard motioned for me to sit down. "You're doing well," he said, his gaze kind but direct. "But I know this is a lot, and it's okay to feel overwhelmed." I blinked, surprised. "You do?" I asked. He nodded. "Absolutely. This isn't easy, and I'm not expecting perfection. What I expect is that you keep going, no matter how hard it gets." His words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I had been trying to live up to an impossible standard. "You've made incredible progress, Anna," Richard continued. "But I want to remind you that it's okay to stumble. It's okay to not have all the answers right away. What matters is that you keep pushing forward." I felt a lump form in my throat as I listened. Richard's words weren't just about education or success. They were about life, about the fact that no matter how hard it got, no matter how many times I failed, it was okay. I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to keep trying. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared that I won't be able to do it, that I'll let everyone down." Richard leaned forward, his expression soft. "You won't let anyone down, Anna. Not me, not yourself. You've already done the hardest part, believing in yourself. And that's something that a lot of people never do." I stared at him, trying to process his words. He was right. I had believed in myself enough to take this chance, to accept his help, but I had to learn to believe in myself even when it was hard, even when everything seemed too much. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for believing in me." Richard smiled. "I always will." The next few weeks were challenging, but something had shifted inside me after that conversation. I no longer felt like I was walking a tightrope. Instead, I felt like I had a safety net, something to catch me if I fell. Richard's support was more than just about school or success. It was about knowing that no matter what happened, I wasn't alone. I kept pushing forward, taking things one step at a time, and the more I did, the more I realized that I was capable of so much more than I had ever thought. As I continued to study, to grow, and to learn, I began to understand what Richard had been trying to teach me all along, that failure wasn't the end. It was part of the journey, and as long as I kept going, I would always have the chance to succeed. The days after that conversation with Richard felt like a new chapter of my life was beginning. It wasn't easy, but I felt more confident than I had in a long time. For the first time, I felt like I had a real chance at something bigger. I had been given opportunities I never imagined were possible, and I was determined to make the most of them. But, as with all things in life, things were not always smooth sailing. There were moments when doubt crept in again. I was still the same little girl from the same small apartment, and sometimes I felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. Richard's belief in me was a constant source of strength, but there were days when I wasn't sure if I could keep up. One day, as I was sitting at my desk, trying to focus on my studies, I received a call from Richard's office. The voice on the other end was calm, but the words hit me like a wave. "Anna, we need you to come in. Richard wants to talk to you." My heart raced. Why would Richard want to talk to me? Had I done something wrong? I pushed the thoughts away and grabbed my things. I didn't know what was waiting for me, but I knew I had to face it. When I arrived at his office, the usual feeling of nervousness settled in. But when I stepped inside, Richard was there, his usual warm smile in place. "Come in, Anna," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please, have a seat." I sat down, my palms slightly sweaty. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Richard's smile softened, and he leaned forward. "I know this might seem sudden," he began, "but I have some important news." He paused, and I could feel the tension building in the air. "There's an opportunity for you to attend a prestigious summer program. It's a chance to work with some of the best in the field, and I believe it could be the next step in your growth." My mind spun. A summer program? With the best in the field? This was huge. But then, a familiar wave of doubt rushed over me. "But I don't think I'm ready," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "What if I don't fit in? What if I fail?" Richard's gaze was steady, unwavering. "Anna, the fact that you're even considering it shows how much you've grown. This is your chance to take everything you've been working for to the next level. You have so much potential, and I believe in you." His words rang in my ears, and for a moment, I felt something stir inside me, a spark of hope, maybe, or a realization that I was capable of more than I had thought. But the fear was still there. What if I couldn't do it? What if this was all too much for me? Richard seemed to sense my hesitation. He leaned back in his chair and added, "I know it's scary, but remember what we've talked about. Growth isn't easy, but it's necessary, and you won't be doing this alone. You'll have the support you need, every step of the way." I took a deep breath. His belief in me was something I had never experienced before. It was like a lifeline, pulling me out of my doubts and fears. For the first time, I realized that maybe I wasn't just doing this for myself. I was doing it for the future I could create, for the person I could become. "Okay," I said finally, my voice steadier now. "I'll do it. I'll take the opportunity." Richard smiled, and it was like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. "That's the spirit," he said. "I'm proud of you, Anna. You're going to do great things." The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. I was nervous, but as the days passed, I started to feel more excited than scared. This was my chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. I focused on my studies, went through the materials for the program, and did everything I could to prepare myself. The closer the program got, the more I realized that Richard was right. This wasn't about being perfect. It was about pushing myself beyond what I thought I was capable of. And when the time came, I was ready. The day I left for the program, I felt a mix of excitement and fear. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer the same person who had been afraid to take the first step. I had changed, and this was just the beginning. I boarded the plane, my heart pounding in anticipation of what was ahead. Whatever came next, I knew I was ready to face it. With Richard's support and my newfound confidence, there was nothing that could hold me back. I was about to take the next step in my journey, and I couldn't wait to see where it would lead. The first day of the summer program felt like stepping into another world. I had never been to something like this before, a place where everyone seemed to already know what they were doing, a place where the air was thick with ambition and knowledge. As I walked into the large auditorium, I felt small, out of place, like everyone around me was already 10 steps ahead. But then, I remembered Richard's words. This is your chance to take everything you've been working for to the next level. You have so much potential, and I believe in you. I took a deep breath, trying to push the nerves aside. I had made it this far. I wasn't about to turn back now. The room buzzed with energy. There were kids my age, maybe even younger, who were already talking about their accomplishments, their plans, their dreams. I felt like an outsider, like I didn't belong. As I found my seat, I noticed the other students, their confident smiles, the way they carried themselves with such ease. I wondered how many of them had been given opportunities like this before, how many of them had the kind of support I was just beginning to experience. I looked around, trying to focus, but the doubts crept back in. What if I wasn't smart enough? What if I couldn't keep up with the rest of them? Richard had said I was capable, but was I really? What if I wasn't as good as they thought? What if I failed? Just then, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see a girl standing next to me, her expression kind. "Hey," she said, "I'm Mia. Are you new here?" I nodded, unsure of what to say. "Yeah, I just started today. I'm a little nervous." Mia smiled, her eyes warm. "Don't worry. I was nervous too when I started, but you'll get the hang of it. Trust me." Her words made me feel a little better. She was so confident, and I could tell that she meant what she said. "Thanks," I replied, giving her a small smile. As the day went on, I started to relax a little. The classes were challenging, but I found myself engaging more than I had expected. The tutors were helpful, patient, and they seemed to believe in me just as much as Richard did. Each lesson felt like a small victory, and even when I stumbled, I reminded myself that this was part of the process. By the end of the day, I felt exhausted, but something inside me had changed. I wasn't the same little girl who had been afraid to take that first step. I was someone who had decided to push through the fear, someone who had taken control of her future. The next few weeks were a blur of hard work and progress. Every day, I pushed myself further than I thought I could. I wasn't just learning from the classes, I was learning from the experience, from the people around me. Mia and I became friends, and she was a constant source of encouragement. She had been where I was, feeling unsure and out of place, but now she was thriving. I took a deep breath, trying to push the nerves aside. I had made it this far. I wasn't about to turn back now. The room buzzed with energy. There were kids my age, maybe even younger, who were already talking about their accomplishments, their plans, their dreams. I felt like an outsider, like I didn't belong. As I found my seat, I noticed the other students, their confident smiles, the way they carried themselves with such ease. During a group project, I struggled to keep up with the pace of the other students. My group members were brilliant, and they seemed to understand everything with ease, but I felt lost. The pressure was starting to build again, and I felt like I was slipping. I couldn't keep up, and the fear of failure was starting to suffocate me. One evening, after a particularly tough day, I sat alone in my dorm room, my head in my hands. I had worked so hard, but it didn't feel like enough. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone, that everyone had to start somewhere. Richard's words continued to echo in my mind. "You're doing great, Anna. I'm so proud of you." Those words kept me going when the days were tough, when I felt like giving up. I knew that I wasn't just doing this for myself. I was doing it for the future I could create. But just as things started to feel like they were falling into place, I was hit with a setback. I had come too far to let fear control me now. The next day, I walked into class with a renewed sense of determination. I wasn't going to let the setback define me. I was going to learn from it, and I was going to keep going. And with that, I realized that I had already succeeded. Not because I had all the answers, not because everything was perfect, but because I had decided to keep going. I was scared that I wasn't cut out for this, that I didn't belong here. My phone buzzed, and I looked down to see a message from Richard. "How's everything going, Anna? I'm thinking about you. Keep going, you're doing great." I stared at the message for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. Richard believed in me, and even when I couldn't believe in myself, I had to trust that his faith in me was real. I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. I wasn't going to give up. I had chosen to take the chance Richard had given me, and that alone made me stronger than I had ever been. Weeks had passed since I had arrived at the summer program, and things were finally starting to feel like they were coming together. The doubts that had haunted me earlier were still there, lingering in the back of my mind, but they were quieter now, muffled by the progress I had made. The challenges I faced had not disappeared, but I had learned to meet them head-on. I sat quietly, watching them discuss the next task, trying to keep up. I had learned so much, but I still felt out of my depth sometimes. Just as I was about to leave and get some fresh air, I received a message from Richard. The message was brief but powerful. "Meet me at the cafe in 30 minutes. I need to talk to you." My heart raced. What could he want to talk about? Was I doing something wrong? I quickly got up and left the common room, my mind spinning with possibilities. The cafe was a small, cozy place near the program's main building. As I entered, I saw Richard sitting at a table near the window, a warm smile on his face as he waved me over. I took a deep breath and walked toward him. As I sat down, he greeted me warmly. "Anna, how are you?" he asked, his voice calm and reassuring. "I'm doing okay," I replied, though I was still unsure of what was happening. Richard didn't waste any time. "I wanted to talk to you about something important. You've been doing exceptionally well here, but I've noticed something. You've been holding yourself back. You're still afraid of failure, and I can see it in the way you approach your work." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I had been trying so hard to prove myself, to show everyone that I was capable, but I hadn't realized how much fear was still controlling me. "I know you want to do well, Anna," Richard continued, his tone gentle but firm, "but you can't let the fear of failure stop you. You have so much potential, and you've already come so far. But if you keep holding back, you're never going to reach the next level." I looked down at my hands, trying to process what he was saying. "I don't know how to stop being afraid," I admitted softly. "I try, but it feels like the fear is always there, lurking in the background." Richard nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Fear is natural," he said. "Everyone feels it. But the key is not to let it control you. The next step for you is to embrace the fear, to use it as motivation instead of letting it hold you back. You can't let your past define what you're capable of in the future." I listened to his words, and something inside me shifted. It wasn't the first time someone had told me to face my fears, but it was the first time it truly sank in. Richard believed in me, and his belief was starting to break through the walls I had built around myself. "But what if I fail?" I asked, the question I had been carrying with me for so long. Richard smiled, a small, reassuring smile. "Failure isn't the end, Anna. It's part of the process. You learn from it, and you keep moving forward. The only real failure is giving up." His words were like a light shining through the fog of doubt that had clouded my mind. I had been so focused on avoiding failure that I had forgotten why I was here in the first place: to learn, to grow, and to become someone I was proud of. "You have everything you need to succeed," Richard continued. "Now, it's time for you to believe it too." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. For the first time, I realized that it wasn't about being perfect. It was about pushing forward, despite the fear, despite the setbacks. It was about having the courage to try, no matter what. That night, I sat in my dorm room, staring at the ceiling, letting Richard's words sink in. I wasn't afraid of failure anymore. I was afraid of not trying. I wasn't going to let fear hold me back any longer. The next day, I walked into class with a new sense of purpose. I wasn't going to let the fear of not being good enough control me. I was going to give everything I had, and if I stumbled along the way, I would pick myself up and keep going, because that was the only way I would ever get to where I wanted to be. And for the first time, I believed that I could. The days following my conversation with Richard felt like a turning point, but I was still uncertain about the path ahead. The fear that had plagued me for so long didn't disappear overnight, but something had shifted inside me. I was no longer just a scared little girl trying to fit in. I was beginning to see that I had the strength to overcome the doubts that had held me back. It wasn't about having everything figured out, it was about the courage to take each step, no matter how small, no matter how uncertain. As the summer program continued, I began to challenge myself in ways I hadn't thought possible. I asked questions, I pushed myself in every class, and I took risks. And with each day, I felt more confident, more capable. It was like building something from the ground up, brick by brick, and I knew that if I kept going, I would get there. But then, one afternoon, as I was walking across campus, something unexpected happened. I ran into one of the students I had worked with earlier on a group project. Her name was Sarah, and she was known for being one of the best in the program. She was confident, intelligent, and always seemed to have everything together. At least, that's how I saw her. But as we passed by, Sarah suddenly stopped and turned toward me. "Hey Anna," she said, her voice surprising me with its warmth. "I just wanted to tell you, you're doing great. I've noticed how much you've improved. It's inspiring." Her words left me speechless for a moment. I hadn't expected that. I had always seen Sarah as someone far ahead of me, someone I couldn't compare to. But here she was, telling me that I had made progress, that I had done something right. "Thank you," I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. "That means a lot to me." "You've got something special, Anna," she said with a small smile. "Just keep doing what you're doing." As Sarah walked away, I stood there, processing what she had said. It was hard to believe at first. Could it really be true? Could I really be doing well, just like everyone else? I didn't know if I was ready to fully believe it, but for the first time, I felt like I was heading in the right direction. The recognition from Sarah meant more than I had expected. It wasn't about validation from others, it was about seeing myself through their eyes, realizing that maybe I was capable of more than I gave myself credit for, and that was a big step for me. But just as things were starting to feel like they were falling into place, another challenge appeared. One afternoon, Richard called me into his office. When I arrived, he was sitting at his desk, a serious expression on his face. I sat down across from him, my nerves spiking once again. "Anna," he began, his voice firm but not unkind. "There's something important we need to talk about." My heart started racing. Had I done something wrong? Was I falling behind? Richard paused for a moment before continuing. "You've made incredible progress, but I think you're ready for something more challenging. I'm offering you an internship at one of my companies. It's a big opportunity, but it's going to push you. You're going to have to work harder than you ever have before." My mind raced, my thoughts scattering in every direction. An internship? With one of Richard's companies? I had never imagined that this could be the next step. I don't know if I'm ready for something like that," I admitted. The fear was back again, flooding through me. "It's okay to feel unsure," Richard said, his voice calm and reassuring. "But I believe you can handle it. You've shown me that you have the drive and the determination, and I want to give you this chance to prove it to yourself." His words were like a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of doubt. I thought about everything I had been through, the struggles, the fears, the moments when I almost gave up, and I realized something. This was the next step. This was the challenge I had been waiting for. "Okay," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "I'll do it. I'll take the internship." Richard smiled, a proud look in his eyes. "I knew you would," he said. "This is just the beginning, Anna. You've got so much potential. Don't let anything hold you back." As I left his office that day, a feeling of both excitement and fear washed over me. I was about to step into a new world, one that I had never imagined myself being a part of. The fear was still there, but now, it was a reminder of how far I had come. I wasn't the same little girl who had been too afraid to take a chance. I was someone who was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to overcome it. And for the first time, I truly believed that I was capable of making it. The internship at Richard's company was everything I could have hoped for and more. From the moment I started, I was thrown into the deep end. The work was challenging, and there were days when I felt completely out of my depth. But every moment pushed me to grow. I learned new skills, worked alongside people who were incredibly talented, and faced situations that tested me in ways I never expected. It wasn't easy, but I could feel myself becoming stronger, more capable, and more confident with every passing day. Richard's belief in me had given me the foundation I needed to take these steps. But it was up to me to continue moving forward. And I did. With each task, I proved to myself that I was more than just someone who had been given a chance. I was someone who could make the most of it. I found myself stepping into leadership roles in meetings, speaking up when I had ideas, and pushing myself to be the best I could be. My colleagues began to notice, and I started to gain their respect not because of my background, but because of my hard work and determination. There were still moments when I doubted myself, when the fear of failure crept in, but I had learned to face those moments with strength. I wasn't afraid of failing anymore. I was afraid of not trying, of not taking every opportunity to grow. Months passed, and my time at the company became a blur of meetings, projects, and breakthroughs. And then, one day, as I sat in Richard's office reviewing a new proposal, he looked at me with a proud smile. "You've come a long way, Anna," he said, his voice filled with genuine pride. "I knew you had it in you, and I've seen you grow into someone truly extraordinary. You've earned every bit of success that's come your way." His words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about the work I had done, it was about the person I had become. I was no longer the scared little girl who had been unsure of her place in the world. I was someone who had taken control of her future. Someone who had worked hard and learned from every failure and setback. And as I looked back on the journey I had taken, I realized just how far I had come. From the moment I had met Richard, everything had changed. He had given me more than just an opportunity. He had given me the confidence to believe in myself, to push past the fear, and to see the potential within me. I thought about the first day I had walked into the summer program, nervous and unsure. I thought about all the moments when I had almost given up, when I had let the fear of failure dictate my choices. But I had chosen to keep going, and that had made all the difference. As Richard's words sank in, I realized that my journey was far from over. This was just the beginning. There was so much more I wanted to accomplish, so many more challenges I wanted to face. I was no longer afraid of the unknown. I knew that with hard work, determination, and the belief that I could do it, I could achieve anything I set my mind to. And with that realization, I understood that success wasn't just about the destination, it was about the journey. It was about pushing yourself, learning from your mistakes, and never giving up, no matter how difficult the road may seem. I had come a long way, but I knew the best was yet to come, and I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, because I had finally found the courage to believe in myself. In this inspiring journey of self-discovery, a young girl faces her deepest fears and rises above them to achieve greatness. Starting from a place of doubt and insecurity, she is given a life-changing opportunity by a billionaire who believes in her potential. As she navigates the challenges of a prestigious summer program, the girl learns to overcome her fears and realize that failure is just a stepping stone to success. Throughout her story, she discovers that true success is not just about academic achievement or external validation. It's about believing in oneself, even when the odds seem impossible. In this gripping tale, we see how a young girl's courage and determination take her from feeling like an outsider to becoming a leader in her own right. The power of Black stories shines through as she defies the limitations placed on her and takes control of her future. With the unwavering support of a mentor, she learns to embrace failure and transform it into the fuel for her success. As she continues her journey, she discovers that the most important thing is not how many times you fall, but how many times you get back up. These Black stories remind us that no matter where we start, we have the power to shape our own destiny. From doubt to confidence, this story proves that anyone can break through barriers and achieve their dreams. With each new challenge, she pushes herself further, demonstrating that the key to overcoming any obstacle is perseverance and self-belief. This tale is a perfect example of how Black stories can inspire and empower people of all backgrounds to believe in their own potential and never give up on their dreams. The girl's transformation is proof that no matter how small you feel at the beginning, with hard work and faith in yourself, you can achieve greatness. The story highlights how powerful Black stories can be in shaping the future and inspiring others to reach for their goals, no matter how big they seem. The journey from fear to strength, from self-doubt to self-assurance, is the heart of this incredible Black story.